the sacred warnings of Padre Pio.
3 years ago, I sat holding my wife Margaret's hand as she took her final breath. The hospital room in Covington was completely quiet. The monitors hummed. The nurses moved softly. It looked peaceful. It looked like a gentle fading out. But Padre Pio warned that this exact fraction of a second is not quiet at all. It is a violent, irreversible collision. The exact moment the soul realizes what it has become. Before we continue, please leave a like on this video and subscribe to the channel. This is very important for the algorithm to understand that this type of content has value, and it is what allows me to continue opening archives that few channels have the courage to open and bringing these investigations to you. I spent 35 years teaching theology to high school students. 35 years standing in front of blackboards, teaching the particular judgment from textbooks. We taught it like a courtroom, a cosmic legal proceeding where God sits at a desk with a ledger, adding up your good deeds in one column and your bad deeds in the other. I watched generations of students treat eternal consequences as an abstract exam topic. Something that would happen to them eventually, but not today. Not right now. But there was always one question that terrified them. It is the same question that probably keeps you awake at 3 in the morning. What if I die in a car accident and I did not have time to confess a mortal sin? Does God really damn me forever over a technicality of timing? The idea that everything is decided in the exact second we die is terrifying. There are no second chances, no appeals, no do-overs. It seems incredibly unfair. A lifetime of doing good, erased by one bad moment right before a fatal crash. How can a loving God send someone to burn in hell forever over a technicality? That is what everybody believes. That is the official version we carry in our heads, a strict judge catching us on a bad day. We build our entire spiritual anxiety around this fear of a sudden trap. But then I went to a conference in 2018. A priest named Father Chad Ripperger was speaking on demonic oppression. He started talking about the reality of the unseen world, and it made me go back and read Padre Pio's actual letters. Not the sanitized versions they put in the textbooks, the real ones. And I realized something chilling. The textbooks had it completely backwards. It is not a technicality. And it is not a trap. In October of 1985, a Catholic priest named Father Stephen Shire was driving on a highway in Kansas. His car collided head-on with a pickup truck. The impact broke his neck. He was thrown from the vehicle. In the emergency room, the doctors said he would not survive the night. But what happened to his physical body in that trauma room was nothing compared to what his soul experienced the exact second it separated from his flesh. Father Shire survived. He came back, and he described what happened in that split second. He found himself standing before the judgment seat. But it was not what he expected. He was a priest. He was outwardly religious. He thought he was fine, but in that instant, he heard a sentence of damnation. Not because of a technicality, but because he had lived a hypocritical priesthood. He was outwardly serving God, but inwardly completely indifferent. He cared more about what his parishioners thought of him than what God knew about him. He said that in that moment, he saw the absolute truth of his own soul. He could not argue. He could not make excuses. He just knew it was true. He reported that the Blessed Virgin Mary interceded for him, and he was granted time to return to life to change his ways and warn others. Wait. A priest. A man who said Mass every day. Condemned not for a single accidental mistake, but for the orientation of his entire life. That is the first crack in the official version. The judgment is not about God catching you by surprise. It is about God showing you exactly what you have been building in the dark. In 1273, St. Thomas Aquinas wrote the Summa Theologiae. He taught that the particular judgment occurs immediately upon death. immediately. The soul receives its individual reward or punishment at once. Before the general judgment at the end of time, the damned are already assigned their damnation. There is no waiting room where you figure things out. There is no deliberation. Why? If God is all-powerful, why could He not just give everyone a second chance after death instead of locking in judgment instantly? Because at death, the soul is separated from the body. It is no longer subject to the changeability that belongs to earthly, embodied life. Time, as we experience it, stops. The soul's fundamental orientation toward or against God, which was built choice by choice across an entire lifetime, becomes permanently fixed. A second chance after death would not respect the definitive choice a free soul has already made. It would actually erase free will entirely. God does not send anyone to hell. Hell is the definitive self-exclusion from communion with God. By dying in unrepented mortal sin, a person uses their own free will to permanently reject God. And God, out of absolute respect for the dignity of that free will, honors the choice the soul has already made. This is where the story turns. Saint Catherine of Genoa was a mystic who wrote extensively on the soul's condition after death. She taught that at the moment of death, the soul itself sees its own state with total clarity for the very first time, without the distractions of the body, without the excuses we make for ourselves, without the lies we tell to our families. The soul sees itself exactly as it is. And here is the most terrifying part. The destination is not arbitrarily imposed by God. It is the soul recognizing what it already is and rushing toward the place where it belongs. The soul moves toward heaven, hell, or purgatory according to what it has become. It is not a judge sending a criminal to prison. It is a magnet pulling iron. If you have spent your entire life pushing God away, ignoring His commandments, living purely for yourself, your soul has become completely incompatible with His light. When you die, that light is not a reward. It is agony. You flee from it. You throw yourself away from it. I remember sitting in my empty house in Covington after Margaret's funeral. I was surrounded by books of theology, but none of them prepared me for the raw reality of this. If I died right now, this exact second, where would I go? What have I actually become? In 1938, Saint Maria Faustina Kowalska recorded a mystical vision of a soul's particular judgment in her diary. Entry 741. She described the damned as suffering the total, permanent realization that their condition will never change. They do not just suffer fire, they suffer perpetual remorse of conscience. They have completely clear sight of their own evil. They see every grace they rejected, every warning they ignored, every time someone tried to pull them back from the edge and they turned away. And they know, with absolute certainty, that they chose this. They did this to themselves. The pain is not just physical. It is the agonizing clarity of knowing that they were loved and they threw it away, and it is entirely their own fault, forever. This completely destroys the idea of the technicality. The person who dies in a car crash with an unconfessed mortal sin is not going to hell because God is being petty about timing. They are going to hell because that unrepented mortal sin was the final crystallization of a heart that had already rejected God, a heart that chose itself over love. St. John of the Cross wrote, "At the evening of life, we shall be judged on our love, not on a checklist, not on a legal loophole, on our love." When Padre Pio spent 15 hours a day in the confessional, reading souls, weeping over the sins of strangers, it was not because he was obsessed with rules. It was because he could see the cliff they were walking toward. He knew that the particular judgment is not a courtroom trap. It is a mirror. And that is why the Catholic Catechism teaches that each person receives eternal retribution in their immortal soul at the very moment of death. It refers each life to Christ. What you are right now in the dark when nobody is watching is what you will be forever if your heart stops beating before this video ends. This is the truth that the textbooks sanitize. The exact moment the soul realizes it is damned forever is the moment it finally stops lying to itself, the moment all the excuses burn away, and it sees that it was given everything and chose nothing. The judgment is not a surprise attack. It is the final, terrifying exposure of the truth you have been building your whole life. You cannot fix it after you cross the line, but you can fix it right now. The present moment is the only time you have any power. The urgency of this very second is the greatest mercy God has ever given you. Do not waste it. You are not just a spectator in this spiritual war. I want you to remember what I told you at the beginning about Father Shire. He thought he was safe because he went through the outward motions. I created this channel because we cannot afford to just go through the motions anymore. I need your help to keep pushing this message forward. By using the Super Thanks button below, you are doing more than supporting a channel. You are actively partnering with me to wake people up to these realities before their time runs out. Your support allows me to dedicate my retirement to researching these forgotten warnings and bringing them to the light. And if you want to take a concrete step right now, I have pinned a comment below with a link to a structured 30-day prayer campaign for the souls in purgatory. It is built on Padre Pio's own practice of intercession for the dead. The pinned comment has the full picture. It is a powerful way to start acting on what you just heard. Now, I want to ask you a very difficult question, and I want you to answer honestly in the comments. When you think about the particular judgment, what is the one thing in your life right now that scares you the most? Is it a habit you cannot break? Is it a grudge you refuse to let go of? Tell me in the comments. We are in this together, and admitting it is the first step toward changing it. Take this warning with you tonight. I want to dive deeper into this because the stakes are simply too high to leave any room for misunderstanding. When I was teaching in the seminary at the Athenaeum of Ohio, we used to have these intense debates about eschatology, the theology of the end times, death, and judgment. Young men, brilliant students, arguing over paragraphs in the Summa Theologiae. But it always felt like an intellectual exercise. We were dissecting the mechanics of eternity while completely insulated from the reality of it. It wasn't until years later, sitting in the quiet of my own living room in Covington, reading the unedited raw letters of Padre Pio, that the academic walls I had built around my faith completely shattered. Padre Pio didn't talk about the particular judgment as a theological concept. He talked about it as a violently immediate reality. He physically suffered because he could see the state of the souls standing in front of him. He knew that the line separating this world from the next is thinner than a sheet of paper. And the moment that paper tears, everything is exposed. Let's go back to the skeptic's argument. The one that says a loving God wouldn't damn someone over a single mistake. We've established that it is not about a single mistake, but about the fundamental orientation of the soul. But I want you to really visualize what happens in that fraction of a second. Imagine your entire life as a trajectory. Every choice you make, every time you choose pride over humility, anger over forgiveness, self-indulgence over sacrifice, you are adjusting the coordinates of your soul by a fraction of a degree. For years, decades even, those micro-adjustments might not seem like they are taking you very far off course. You still go to Mass. You still consider yourself a good person. You don't commit murder or rob banks. But over 30, 40, or 80 years, a trajectory that is off by just 1 degree eventually places you light years away from your intended destination. When death comes, the trajectory simply solidifies. It freezes in place. If your coordinates are pointed away from God, even slightly, the removal of the physical body means there is no longer any friction to slow you down. You plunge headlong in the direction you were already traveling. That is what Saint Catherine of Genoa meant. The soul rushes toward what it has become. This completely dismantles the comforting lie we tell ourselves. I'll make it right later. Later is the most dangerous word in the English language. It is the word the devil uses to pave the road to hell. Padre Pio saw this. He saw people coming to confession, holding back their darkest sins, planning to confess them later when they felt less embarrassed. He would look at them, sometimes weeping, sometimes shouting, because he knew that later does not exist. There is only now. Think about Father Stephen Shire again. He was a priest, a man who administered the sacraments. If anyone had a reason to feel secure, it was him. But the judgment he faced wasn't about his outward actions. It was about the interior reality of his heart. The terrifying truth is that you can do all the right things for all the wrong reasons, and in the moment of your particular judgment, the reasons are all that matter. This brings us to the profound urgency of the present moment. If the judgment is a mirror, what do you see when you look into it right now? Not the version of yourself you show your family, not the version you show your co-workers. The unvarnished, raw reality of your soul. Are you harboring a secret resentment that is slowly turning your heart to stone? Are you indulging in a private sin that you have convinced yourself is harmless because nobody else knows about it? Saint Faustina's vision in entry 741 of her diary is not meant to be a horror story. It is a severe mercy. By showing us the perpetual remorse of the damned, she is offering us the greatest gift imaginable, the chance to feel that remorse now, while it can still heal us, rather than later, when it will only torment us. The damned suffer because they finally see the truth when it is too late to act on it. You are seeing the truth right now, and you still have time. That is the incredible grace of this exact moment. You are still breathing. You still have a body. You still have the ability to change the coordinates of your soul. You can walk into a confessional today and completely alter your eternal trajectory. I don't say this lightly. I say it as someone who spent decades teaching a sanitized version of the faith, completely missing the desperate urgency that Padre Pio lived every single day. I say it as someone who sat beside his dying wife and realized that all the theological degrees in the world mean absolutely nothing compared to the simple, terrifying reality of a soul meeting its creator. The exact moment the soul realizes it is damned forever is the moment it realizes it chose its own damnation, piece by piece, day by day, while ignoring every warning God sent to pull it back. Do not be the soul that wakes up to the truth a second too late. Let the reality of the particular judgment change the way you live today. Let it make you radically honest with yourself. Let it drive you to the confessional, not out of a paralyzing fear of a technicality, but out of a burning desire to align your heart with the God who loves you enough to warn you. We are navigating a spiritual minefield, and the enemy wants you asleep. He wants you distracted by the noise of the world, so you never stop to examine the silent reality of your soul. My mission, the reason I sit in this room in Covington and record these videos, is to wake you up. But I cannot do it alone. If this message shook you, if it made you realize something needs to change, please consider supporting the channel through the Super Thanks button. It allows me to keep digging into these truths, bypassing the sanitized textbooks, and bringing the raw, unfiltered warnings of the saints to a world that desperately needs them. And remember the pinned comment. If you want to take action right now, the 30-day prayer campaign for the souls in purgatory is there for you. It's a way to actively engage in the spiritual battle, to help those who can no longer help themselves, and to soften your own heart in the process. I asked you earlier to tell me what scares you most about the particular judgment. I read the comments. I pray for the people who write them. We are building a community of people who refuse to stay asleep. So tell me the truth in the comments. Acknowledge the darkness, so the light can finally get in. Remember what I told you at the beginning. The judgment is not a trap. It is a mirror. Make sure you can look into it today without turning away. When I say God honors the choice the soul has already made, I am not speaking in abstracts. Let's look at the historical record. In the early centuries of the Church, there was a fierce debate about this exact topic. Some theologians, brilliant minds of their era, argued that eventually, after thousands of years of purification, even the damned and the fallen angels would be restored to God. They could not fathom an eternal consequence. It is a comforting thought, isn't it? The idea that eventually, no matter what you do, everyone gets a participation trophy in eternity. But the Church categorically rejected that idea, not to be cruel, but because to accept it would be to fundamentally deny human freedom. If God forces you to love Him eventually, then your love was never a choice. You were just a prisoner waiting out a sentence. This is the terrifying dignity of being human. God respects you enough to let you walk away forever. He will not chase you into hell to drag you back against your will. I remember a conversation I had with a student in Covington, maybe 20 years ago. He was a bright kid, always looking for the loophole in the theology textbook. He asked me, "Mr. Raymond, what if I live a terrible life, but right as my car goes over a cliff, in that half second before I hit the ground, I just yell out that I'm sorry? Does that count?" I gave him the textbook answer. I said, yes, perfect contrition in the final moment can save a soul. And it is true. Theologically, it is true. But reading Padre Pio years later, I realized how dangerously naive my answer was. I should have told that student the harder truth. I should have told him that in the half second before the car hits the ground, you do not magically become a different person. In a moment of sheer terror and adrenaline, the soul defaults to its deepest, most ingrained habit. If you have spent your entire life turning to yourself, turning to your pride, cursing your circumstances, or ignoring God, you are not going to suddenly, miraculously summon an act of perfect, selfless love for the Creator. You are going to react exactly the way you have trained yourself to react every single day of your life. It is not a technicality, it is momentum. The soul in that plunging car is already falling before the tires ever leave the road. Padre Pio saw this momentum in the people who came to his confessional. He could see the spiritual gravity pulling them down. When he would physically throw someone out of his confessional, shouting at them, refusing them absolution, people thought he was being harsh. They didn't understand. He wasn't acting as a judge. He was acting as a paramedic. He was trying to violently interrupt their momentum. He was trying to shock them awake before their trajectory became permanent. He knew that the particular judgment does not wait for you to compose yourself. It happens the millisecond the soul is detached from the nervous system. The absolute clarity of St. Catherine of Genoa's teaching hits you with the force of a freight train. You see your own spiritual deformity, and the revulsion you feel toward the absolute purity of God's light is what sends you fleeing into the outer darkness. This is the reality the modern world wants to erase. The world wants you to believe you always have more time, but the archives tell a different story. The mystics, the saints, the near-death experiences of priests like Father Shire, they all point to the exact same inescapable truth. Let's pause and consider the sheer weight of what we are discussing. We live in a culture that treats death as an unfortunate medical failure. We hide it in hospitals. We sedate it. We put makeup on the deceased so they look like they are just sleeping. We do everything in our power to avoid facing the reality that death is not a pause. It is a hard, definitive stop to the time of mercy and the immediate commencement of the time of justice. When I was at the Athenaeum of Ohio, I remember reading a very obscure text by a theologian whose name I have long since forgotten. But the concept he presented never left me. He said that the greatest trick of the modern age is not convincing people that hell doesn't exist, It is convincing people that hell is for other people, for the dictators, the murderers, the truly evil. But what Padre Pio saw in the confessional, day in and day out, was the terrifying reality of the lukewarm soul. The soul that isn't completely cold, but isn't burning with love either. The soul that settles for a comfortable mediocrity, assuming that God grades on a curve. God does not grade on a curve. St. John of the Cross made it devastatingly clear. At the evening of life, we shall be judged on our love, not on our compliance with a minimum standard, not on our ability to avoid major scandals, but on the fire of our love. If you die with a lukewarm heart, a heart that fundamentally loved itself more than it loved God, the particular judgment will expose that reality with the blinding intensity of a supernova. This is why the fear of dying in an accident and being condemned over a technicality is a complete misunderstanding of how the spiritual life works. The accident might be sudden, but the state of your soul is not. The state of your soul is the cumulative result of thousands of tiny, seemingly insignificant choices. Think about water slowly eroding a rock. For years, you might not notice a difference, but one day, the rock simply crumbles. It didn't crumble because of the final drop of water. It crumbled because the structure had been weakened over a lifetime. When a person dies with an unconfessed mortal sin, that sin is rarely an isolated anomaly in an otherwise perfect life. It is almost always the culmination of a long, slow process of spiritual erosion. A habit of choosing oneself over God. A pattern of ignoring the quiet voice of conscience. So when the soul stands before God, stripped of the physical body, stripped of all earthly titles and bank accounts and reputation, it cannot plead ignorance. It cannot point to a technicality. It sees the entire tapestry of its life, and it sees exactly how it wove the pattern of its own destruction. I want to return to St. Faustina's diary for a moment. She wrote that the damned suffer the perpetual remorse of conscience. Think about what remorse feels like in this life. You make a terrible mistake. You hurt someone you love, and the guilt eats at you. But in this life, time dulls the pain. You distract yourself. You go to sleep. You eventually move on. In eternity, there is no time. There is no sleep. There are no distractions. The remorse is permanent, sharp, and ever-present. The soul is forced to look continuously at the agonizing reality that it was created for infinite joy, and it threw it away for a handful of dust. This is the exact moment the soul realizes it is damned forever. It is the moment it fully comprehends the magnitude of what it has lost, and the absolute certainty that it will never, ever get it back. I am sharing this with you not to paralyze you with fear, but to liberate you from complacency. The textbooks I taught from for 35 years tried to soften these edges to make the faith more palatable to a modern audience. But Padre Pio knew that a softened faith cannot save you when the moment of truth arrives. You need the sharp edges. You need the unfiltered reality. Because the reality is what will drive you to your knees in repentance. If you are listening to my voice right now, you have an opportunity that the souls in hell would give anything to have for just 1 second. You have the opportunity to say, Lord, have mercy on me, a sinner. Do not wait until the evening of life. Do not wait until you are lying in a hospital bed in Covington, Kentucky, or wherever you happen to live, listening to the hum of the monitors. Do it now. Make a thorough examination of conscience. Go to confession, not as a legalistic chore, but as a desperate, joyful return to the God who is waiting for you with open arms. The judgment seat is a place of terror for the unrepentant, but it is a place of unimaginable vindication for those who have washed their robes in the blood of the Lamb. This channel exists to sound the alarm, to blow the trumpet before the enemy breaches the gates. Your support through the Super Thanks allows me to dedicate my time to uncovering these hard truths and bringing them to you. Every time you engage with this content, every time you share it, you are helping to wake someone up from their spiritual slumber. And please look at the pinned comment. The 30-day prayer campaign for the souls in purgatory is a vital practice. When you pray for the holy souls, they pray for you. It is a powerful alliance in the spiritual war. Finally, I want to read the comments. I want to know that this message is landing. What is the one thing you know you need to change today so that you can face the particular judgment with peace instead of terror? Write it down. Acknowledge it. Then take it to the confessional. The clock is ticking for all of us. Use the time you have left to become the saint you were created to be.